We'd like to say good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to the Shreveport City Council meeting. We ask that you would be kind enough to silence your cell phone or turn them off. We're going to have Minister Daphne Tebow to come and lead us in prayer. We're going to have Councilman Teleferro to lead us in the pledge.
Good afternoon. Psalm 133 and 6 says, "How good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity." God, we thank you on this day, God. We thank you, God, for the blessing of today, God. And we thank you, God, for hearts and minds, oh God, that are leaning, oh God, toward unity. Unity, oh God, in this council. Unity, oh God, in this city, God. And we ask, God, that the decisions that are made, oh God, from this day forward will be those that will bring unity, oh God, unto a people, oh God, who you have created. God, we love you. And we thank you, God, for every decision that is made. We thank you, oh God, for every plan, oh God, that is presented on today, God. And we ask, God, that you open us up, oh God, to receive of you that you want us, oh God, to show love one for another, one to another, oh God. We know that you want to be manifested, oh God, in our lives, oh God. And we have to, oh God, open ourselves and be willing to do just that. Help us, God, to walk in unity. Help us, God, to make decisions, oh God, that will bring unity in the city of Shreveport, oh God, and we love you. We thank you for loving and creating us, oh God, and we thank you, oh God, for this day that you have made, that without you, none of us would be. It's in your name that we pray and say amen, and thank you, God.
Amen. Amen. All face the flag. And as we say the pledge, let us be mindful of the sacrifices of our POWs and MIAs. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very kindly. At this time, Madam Clerk, would you be kind enough to call the roll?
Here, ma'am.
Here.
Here.
I'm here. Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the special meeting Monday, September 11th, 2023, administrative conference meeting Monday, September 11th, 2023, and the city council meeting Tuesday, September 12th, 2023? Moved by Councilwoman Taylor, second by Councilman Teleferro. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion passes with 7.
Thank you. We're going to ask that as each council member speak, that you would be kind enough to get as close to the mic as you possibly can. Does any council member have any awards, recognition, or distinguished guests not to exceed 15 minutes?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to, at this time, I'd like to invite Mr. Steve Pinkley to address the council.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and the council. I'm here with questions asking about the third year in a row we're fighting the insurance again for the retirees of the city of Shreveport. Already we understand that the insurance board has passed a recommendation that all retirees that have reached Medicare age and have parts A and B will not have a choice. They will be put under an advantage plan that was signed by the mayor and agreed upon. I don't believe that is a good deal. Last year we had a CAO from one of the major hospitals here in town. He said that if you're young and healthy, an advantage plan is good. If you're not, be careful. He said you're rolling the dice. He said when you go in the hospital, you don't know what it covers and what it does not cover, and you would be surprised. I have two examples that my wife's sisters both decided to go advantage plans. One of them shouted, "Oh, great. I get a free gym membership. I get a free card, says I can get my aspirin and my other products free every quarter." She came down with cancer. Chemo drugs were not covered. Oxygen was not covered. How can you survive if you can't get your chemo drugs and you've got cancer? The other one thought, "Oh, great, I'm getting my money back." Of course, all of her doctors dropped her and could not find another doctor to cover her till she got back off of the Advantage plan. You're putting us at risk. You know, thank goodness, myself, my wife, we've been good and healthy, haven't had any problems. But there's a lot of people on retirees of employees of the city of Shreveport, not just fire or police, but others that have come down with injuries or sickness due to their work relations and stuff. I just wish that we wouldn't put the cart in front of the horse. We don't know what these Advantage plans cover. We don't know what they don't cover. I know there was a problem last year because Willis Knighton was not involved. They were put on another tier. Some kind of arrangement has been made. They are now part of the whole system, which is great. But the thing is, we still don't know what's covered and what's not covered. I know they're fixing to have some conferences to let us know some of the stuff, but I mean, it's already been voted on by the insurance board that that's the way it's going to be and signed by the mayor. I just wish you all would think about it a little bit and do a little more research and let the retirees be involved in what's decided. Thank you for your time.
Yes, sir, we'll come back. Mr. Mayor, do you have any awards recognition of distinguished guests not to exceed 15 minutes?
Only to let you know that the appointees for the Workforce Development Board are here in case you have any questions. Those are all recommended by the Department of Community Development to me. And I'll cover the other in the next item.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, do you have any other communication relative to city business other than?
Yes, sir, I do, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
We learned today that one of the positions on the Shreveport Implementation and Redevelopment Authority has been filled. Therefore, I have sent a letter withdrawing the name of Mr. Malsh as an appointee, and we would ask that you vote on those appointments. There'll be 8 instead of 9. Vote on those appointments at your next meeting. We ask that the rest of them be postponed today.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Does any member have any concerns related to property standards for Mr. Green?
Mr. Gray, I need to get with you so we can actually schedule a property standards meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
Anyone else? Thank you. Mr. Clark, will there be a master plan committee report today?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was beginning to thank you, forgotten I was even back there. The process of the master plan update is in full gear. We are in the process of finalizing the contract with the approved consulting firm that the MPC board selected as a result of recommendations from the master plan subcommittee. We're looking at filling the steering committee. We're looking at giving them a list of stakeholders to be a part of the process. We're going through the contract negotiation process that has to come through the city's process before it can be signed. And then we have made a good effort, and we made a exciting connection with the universities of LSUS, Southern University, and Centenary College. And those universities and their students will be a part of the master plan process. We are very concerned why all of those persons get education and training and leave the city of Shreveport to never come back again. And they've said, because you all never talk to us. So in this process, we are going to be talking to these young people, understanding what their needs are, what their desires are, what they feel that Shreveport should be about. So we're extremely excited about starting the process, and I will have a report for you each month if you will allow me to come up.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Clark. Did everyone receive the budget to the actual financial report? I'm sure you did. Public hearing, none. Madam Clerk, will there be any legislation added today? Today, we will hear public comments on agenda items only. The vice chair will control the names and the time.
Sammy Mears.
Sammy Mears, 1901 Centenary Boulevard, apartment M110, Shreveport, Louisiana, 71101. Today I'm speaking on three of them, 9A118, 9A119, and 9A120. All three of these are great ideas, and I like them very, very much. Please vote yes on 9A118 to dedicate 2100 block of Wyoming Street for Edward Julius Caesar, and 119 to recognize Cindy Dyer at 400 block of East 75th Street, and then honoring for 120 Mary Louise Bell Moore. I like the idea for all three of these. Please vote yes today. Thank you.
April Palm. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I thought it was a P. I'm sorry.
Hello,
Hi.
my name is April Dom. I live in Highland at 711 Rutherford Street. I am speaking to you today on behalf of the Highland Neighborhood Association, of which I am president, regarding case number 23-48-C, special use permit and site plan for Taylor Family Properties. The Highland Neighborhood Association had some leadership changes over the summer, and we were made aware of the approval of the aforementioned special use permit in the late stages of the process. Our organization has updated our contact information with the MPC to be better aware of zoning issues in the future. And I do apologize that we came to this late in the game. Upon review, we have several concerns about this special use permit. Section 16.3E1 requires that the design, location, and operating plans of the special use permit must be such that public health, safety, and/or welfare are protected. We feel the mitigation of nuisances has not been fully considered. How will the area be closed off to loitering after business hours? Considering the proximity of the residential abutting the site and a music stage that was mentioned in the report, although it was not in the most current site plan, it was mentioned in the report. What are the hours of operation? Will live music be held to noise ordinance regulations without the neighbors repeatedly having to call the police, as has been the case at another outdoor music venue in our neighborhood? Section 16.3E5 requires consideration of existing and proposed vehicular and pedestrian circulation systems. How will vehicular traffic safely ingress and egress the proposed site? We have concerns for safety of both pedestrians and cars on the 4-lane Stoner Avenue, which is a known speedway. Upon learning about the approval of this special use permit, I spoke to Mr. Clark, director of the MPC. According to him, the fact that Taylor Family Properties owns property in Highland was a part of his decision to allow the special use permit. Knowing this, The H&A, Highland Neighborhood Association, of course, was curious of these properties. A few of us drove through the neighborhood to see what Taylor Family Properties was doing with each of its investments in our neighborhood. The LLC has nearly 30 properties in Highland, most of which are residential. Only a few of the properties are well maintained. Most are overgrown and need of a repair. And a few were uninhabitable, and at least 2 buildings looked abandoned, were not boarded up, and thus were open to anyone in any type of activity. It is our opinion that Taylor Family Properties does not have a proven track record of care and maintenance for the properties they currently own and manage. I'm sorry?
You reached your 3 minutes. How much more do you have?
Just one paragraph. Thank you, I appreciate it. In conclusion, those of us who call Highland home see many who promise to do great things for our neighborhood. But how do we know that they are keeping their end of the agreement? There is no one keeping track of these properties and all the promises made to the neighborhood and various official entities, such as the MPC and City Council, except those of us who live there. Highland is a historic neighborhood, and we are working very hard to make a comeback. We are eager to encourage investment in our neighborhood. Investment means more than dollars. We need folks to invest their time and effort to ensure that their investments are sound and show care for those of us who live here. Thank you so much for your time.
Welcome. Louis Abalone.
Chairman Green, Vice Chairman Taylor, Mr. Mayor, and members of the City Council. I rise today with regards to a proposition before you, Ordinance number 90, with respect to 813 King Place. This proposition is for the city to give its property away for free so that it might make real estate owned by a single individual more valuable. I urge that the current resolution be tabled at least until the abandonment issue, which is being pursued by the property owner, which Mr. Clark advises will be considered by the MPC next month. And I urge that it be tabled at least until such time that the MPC can address this matter. Mr. Furlong, and let me back up, that it be tabled at least until there is some delineation of what this project will entail and how much it will cost the city. Mr. Furlong said at a recent Capital Improvements Committee meeting that there were hundreds of street projects requiring a minimum of $59 million to complete. I'd like to know how much this abandonment or this encroachment of city property, of this public dedication, will cost taxpayers, especially when there are so many other street projects needing funding across the city. And I'd like to know, where does Mr. Furlong's PCI data indicate that this project is prioritized over others? How many potholes or sidewalks could the city repair with the monies that will be spent to make the property at 813 King Place more valuable for a single real estate owner? How many handicap ramps could be repaired with these monies so that citizens in wheelchairs don't have to be wheeled out in the middle of the streets just to catch a bus? With no budget established by the city yet for the abandonment of this public dedication or the encroachment, and a pending MPC meeting next month, I respectfully ask that this matter today be tabled so as to ensure that the proposed encroachment does not adversely affect the public interest or disproportionately divert funding away from other street projects that the PCI data indicates should be completed first. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I do plan to withdraw this legislation today. I've spoken to Mr. Furlong, and there are some other plans in the works, and we'll get to that in the next couple of months, but I do wish to withdraw it.
Chris Lyon.
Thank you. Chris Lyon, 509 Market Street, here in downtown Shreveport. I've been a resident of downtown for 10 years as of last month, and had the pleasure of working down here for 16. I think that you'd be hard-pressed to find someone who's more passionate about downtown than I am, as somebody who doesn't have a business down here per se. But I believe that businesses should be able to make money and operate in any way that they can to make money and be successful. I spent the last 12 years organizing and producing dozens of events, big and small, indoor, outdoor, from proms to food competitions and community building conferences, music festivals. And I believe that great businesses and great community and culture have the power to transform our city, and that includes nightlife. I've been at the Standard Apartments also at the corner of Texas and Market Street since it opened 4 years ago. And I knew that when I moved in, I was going to be in the nightlife district, and that I would have everything that would come with it. All that said, I came today to speak on the noise ordinance that's being proposed, and two issues I think that are at the heart of it, which are regulation and responsibility. First, regulation. What used to be kind of the bumping club music inside buildings with the front door open, or the occasional loud music festival like the Revel or Let the Good Times Roll or Mudbug, or even the awesome Bayou Classic street party, which kind of spilled out in all of its glory, has now become something that's much, much more common. For some history, the club music levels on a normal weekend are between 85 and 88 decibels. It's a measure of volume. It's pretty normal for a club district, but now, with the speakers added to the outsides of some of these businesses, the levels are hitting 96 and even louder. And while 10 may not seem like a lot, a noise curve is actually exponential. So every 6 decibels is a doubling of the volume. So what we have now is somewhere between 3 and 4 times the volume of downtown in the club district as there was before. And this is happening every week. Bourbon Street, Broadway in Nashville, Beale Street in Memphis, they all have enforceable noise ordinances, and they're set in the mid-80s. Without a special events permit. Wanted to put that in there. And look, a reasonable enforceable noise ordinance keeps people honest and creates an environment where everybody can have fun, and it can still be loud. Like 86 at a distance is actually still pretty loud. And I wanted to also say here too that grandfathering in someone's setup that just put in over the last year is not really going to fly for me. That's new, it's not old. I also want to talk about personal responsibility really quickly because it was brought up in the last council meeting. I agree that there are some things that SPD should be responsible for, but if a business is creating a set of conditions where their business is spilling out into the streets by way of placing speakers outside and things like that, some responsibility, some honest culpability is something that a business owner should take on and act upon it. Unfortunately, we do need some regulation now. I'm not a fan of it. But we also all need those who are working to create great businesses downtown to take some personal responsibility and make sure that the neighborhood is good for everybody and other businesses, and we're not getting into these like sound wars and stuff that are happening. It's not good for anybody, not just residents. Anyway, thank you for your time. I appreciate your consideration.
Kathy Boyer.
Hi, I'm Kathy Boyer, 9404 Prestonwood Drive in Shreveport. I've worked in downtown for about 15 years, and I also worked downtown in the 60s and early 70s. Back then, I used to walk from the riverfront twice a day to Commercial National Bank and not give it a thought. Now, I park right outside my building, and I'm scared to get in my car at night at 5 o'clock or later, especially when the daylight savings time goes away. Where I park, which is at meters, I found bullet casings. There's a bullet hole in a building 2 doors down, the plate glass. Twice I had to come down late at night by myself, and the first time, the only parking place I could find was at the fire hydrant. And I ran in and did what I had to do. The next time I needed to be in there a little bit longer, and I literally could not find a spot. It was on a Saturday night. The noise and the crowds were out there, and I was shocked. I had to park in the alley in the dark because I was not planning on having I should have had a flashlight, but it was an eye-opening experience as to what goes on downtown at night. The trash around our building, and we also lease a parking lot. We have a 17,000 square foot office building with multi-tenants that we try very hard to keep. So one of my jobs is to case the place for trash and pick it up as quickly as possible. There's whiskey bottles, drink cups. I found little cigar boxes, beer cans, other kind of cans. And there's also been things hurled against the street level tenants' plate glass windows, of which I need to remain anonymous. It's just not, we're trying so hard to keep our tenants, and we're also operating under a threat of one tenant that if there's any more shootings downtown, they're leaving. The crowds are attracted by the noise, and they're destroying downtown. People are leaving out of fear of the crowds and the mischief associated with it. And we're also seriously talking about leaving. So I do urge you, please, to vote for the noise ordinance. Thank you.
Jerry Harper. I'm sorry.
Council, Mr.
Attorney
Mayor,
Jerry Harper.
Your Excellency,
That was me.
I'm Jerry Harper. I own and invest in a building at 200 block of Texas Street. It's just across the street from Northworthy Gallery and the Hayes. And I've been there for more than 15 years. Been in downtown Shreveport since '78. I'm a lawyer, and I speak not only for myself, but for tenants and landowners who surround me, some of whom are not comfortable being here speaking because of fear of vandalism. We work at our office 6 or more often 7 days a week, often at night. And I'm concerned about safety and the value of our property, and I'm concerned about the same for my clients. I rise in favor of the noise ordinance and the active, conscientious enforcement of it and other nuisance and public safety laws. Texas Street is the ceremonial boulevard of the city of Shreveport, from the foot of the bridge to the church. The 200 block of Texas Street is the gateway to that ceremonial boulevard. It's supposed to be the center of the Arklatex. Look at what it has become. Lawlessness has become common in the middle of our downtown area, and it affects the safety, welfare, and the value of property of its citizens. Noise is only one aspect of it, but it is foundational to a solution. The noise levels are intentional and they're unlawful. They are designed to be an attractive nuisance because that attractive nuisance generates revenues and it generates traffic, no matter what the cost is to the larger community. The price to be paid by the neighbors for these lawless establishments is of no concern to some of them. I have never had a single one of these bar owners approach us or my clients and ask, how can they accommodate us? How can we work together? Never. They just keep violating the law until the police department, overworked and understaffed, intervene and stop them. And those who complain the loudest about enforcement are the ones who violate the law the most. This is not a dispute between bar owners, although they surely fight among themselves and they compete. It's about enforcing our laws to prevent lawlessness and violence. It's about protecting people and property. Please pass the ordinance. Thank you.
Christine Bailey.
Good afternoon. I'm Christine Bailey, and this is my husband, Chris, and we own the building at 214 Texas. We bought the building back in 2007 when there was the big movement to live, work, and play downtown. We spent 4 years building our residence on the second floor. Back then, it was a lot nicer than it has been in the past few years. Rarely ever do we look forward to a weekend, because every weekend we have to fight for our sanity, just about, from the ear-splitting noise that comes from the music venues. Whenever I have a guest over, instead of putting a chocolate on the pillow, I put complimentary earplugs on the pillow. I believe, and what we've seen over the past few years, because it's gotten worse and worse and worse, most of the time we don't go out of our home on the weekends because it's almost like we're trapped there. We have people, crowds in the front, we have crowds in the back, and there's almost no escape for us. We've dealt with bullet holes in our building, drunks tearing up the front of our building, tearing up the back of our building. We used to have broken windows. We don't have nice flower pots out front anymore because everything gets destroyed. And I know that there's a lot that come for the partying, but the noise is doesn't come from just clubs. It comes from people that drive up in their vehicles to show off, the motorcycles that come and park on the street or the sidewalk, playing their music so loud that it's just ridiculous. And it's just really affected the quality of our life for living downtown. I've served on the board of directors for the DDA. We've done so many things over the years to try to improve downtown. Our house was on the downtown tour of homes. It was even on HDTV because our place is so fabulous. But when we get ready to retire, who's going to want to buy this building? Nobody wants to move downtown because of all the violence that goes on, because of the crowds. It's just, and the police, they come every weekend, but sometimes their hands are a little tied and they're totally outnumbered. The crowds get absolutely, you wouldn't believe it if you weren't there to see it. So most of the time, we live in fear. Yeah. Time's up? Okay. Anyway, I would really appreciate it if you would pass the noise ordinance, because we believe that will help
Get rid of the crowds.
and get rid of the massive, I call them mobs, because they kind of take on a mob mentality. Yeah. So anyway, thank you for listening.
Tim Hook.
Tim Huck, 415 Spring Street, Shreveport, Louisiana, 71101. Yesterday, a lot of stuff was said about me to try to turn a noise ordinance into a sandbar haze deal. First of all, the noise ordinance doesn't just enforce to haze. It enforces to everybody. It makes it where no one can. There's been noise complaints made from Corner Lounge, from 318, from neighborhoods. By the way, if the noise ordinance isn't enforceable today in downtown, it's not enforceable in your neighborhoods. It's not enforceable to your constituents, okay? So when big speakers and people call in because they have parties in your neighborhood, at your house, you gotta call the cops, okay? Don't call them, because you're saying, hey, it's okay to make the noise. It's okay to interrupt everyone else's life for yourself. I got some things being said about we have more police calls. Yes, we do, because I call the police. Because anytime there's a minor fight, instead of putting people out in the street and not allowing the police to know that we're fixing to put two hostile people on the street, we actually call the cops. Where I can show video after video, which I've already sent y'all, of another establishment that doesn't call the cops. You know, the same owner, I think she had an establishment where one of her security guards killed an unarmed man instead of calling the cops. What we do is we call the cops because we prefer law and order. And law and order is very, very, very important in downtown Shreveport, as it is in all of Shreveport. The small things that we don't take care of lead to big things, okay? Again, Saturday night, a burst of mace was put across the full 100 block, of the whole block of Spring Street, the whole 400 block of Spring Street. Just a burst of mace shot across the 400 block of Spring Street. How is that for the image of downtown? How is that for business? We passed a smoking ban to adjusted the smoking ordinance for the casinos because the casinos are losing money or not making the same revenue. I agree with passing that because I agree that the casinos need a better opportunity to survive. But customers don't want to drive through a burst of fight, a burst of mace, a person twerking in the street to be able to drive to the casinos. So it's not just the smoking that's hurting the casinos' numbers. All the businesses in downtown are down. Not just my business, all the businesses are in downtown, all of them in downtown are down, except for the one that's extremely over capacity, violating the law. They say I feel targeted. When you're breaking the law, you are targeted. When they go and rush into a crack house, that crack house is targeted because it is breaking the law. The law is very, very clear. It's 65 and 55 dBMs. It's been on the books for years. I've been ticketed for it. They took one of my liquor licenses for it, so I know that they have enforced it before. Okay? I don't care if you will say we can't enforce the one that we have, but we do have a new one that does need to be implemented and put in place to be enforced.
Wilton Sample.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Huck.
Yes, sir.
Question. Do you think the noise is 100% responsible for the large crowds, or is there some other reason outside of the noise?
I've been downtown for 25 years. I've never seen the crowds like this. I've never heard levels of music at this level. So yes, do I think that it's 100% for all the people? No. But the 18, 19, and 20-year-olds that are piling across the street that I sent y'all videos of, the 18, 19, and 20-year-olds standing in that parking lot that aren't even going in any club, they've never been downtown before this noise. They've never been downtown before Pat Brown took over Hayes. Not one time. You never heard me say a word about Hayes. They've been there 8 years. You've never seen me here talking about them. Actually, you've only seen me as a patron over there before then. Okay? This noise is causing major issues. The whole crowd is in one block. They're on the 200 block of Texas and the 400 block of Spring. That's all they're at. That's the only place you see them. I send everyone videos. You come downtown yourself, you don't see them anywhere else. They're piled right there. So if they're not piled there listening to the music, why do they happen to pile in that one place that they've never piled there before?
The reason I asked, because I said yesterday I had a similar issue in my district at a club that doesn't have a patio where large crowds are crowded. I do want to thank Chief Smith because a strong police presence has been shown up in that area and those crowds have not been gathering there thus far. So I just want to make sure when we're looking at the noise ordinance that we're actually addressing the true problem, which is the loitering. And I'm not 100% convinced that the noise is 100% that reason, but I want to get your perspective on it.
Well, their DJs believe it because when they turned on their sirens, they turned up their music louder than the sirens.
Good afternoon, Mayor Arsenault, City Council. Thank you for the time. I'm hitting the start button. I know I've been given 3 minutes. I'm going to try to take less than that. Several of my constituents have already brought up some of my talking points. I'm going to just try to keep it as quick as I can. The one phrase I find really important is mob mentality. I left Shreveport after I came back to Shreveport, went to college, went off to graduate school, got a job downtown Houston, lived in downtown Houston for 4 years at the corner of Texas and Main Street. I'm not new to loud restaurants, loud bars, parties, and whatnot. The one thing I will try to express to you, City Council, is that you have another issue at heart, is that the noise ordinance would curb a lot of this problem. But there's a side effect to not doing that. It's the values that some of these people have mentioned of downtown commercial real estate. And 20 years ago when I was growing up, downtown Shreveport had a lot of opportunity. It's gone. In fact, my old employer was one of the last to move us to Houston. If we can keep some form of precedence that the city council and the city of Shreveport run the 200 block of Texas Street and not the mob mentality, you will help Shreveport, downtown Shreveport, just a little bit. You can see these terrible situations going on in Portland, in Seattle, where it is literally mob mentality and the police don't do anything. Please support noise ordinance. I think it is very important. Anything less than that, you will lose a tremendous amount of what's left of the occupancy, the tenants in downtown Shreveport. Thank you for your time.
Craig Lee.
Craig Lee, 1112 Prospect Street. I'm glad that the elder gentleman came up to speak about health care insurance for retirees, because that's one of the main reasons why political corruption and not focusing on elevating the city in terms of population, business development, and employees is so critical. So I'm glad that he actually came up, which gets into my presentation today about Paygate investigation. The Paygate investigation began as a witch hunt into the unilateral pay raises that Chairman Green authorized for our awesome city council staff based on a gray area in our policies that regulate the powers of the chairman. However, Chairman Green apologized for that. But on the flip side, a few councilmen wanted to push for an investigation. So we saw the young lady on yesterday who was supposed to be conducting the investigation, but there are 4 questions that we need to have answered by the city attorney and the city council. Number 1, how much will this investigation cost taxpayers? Number 2, what will be the scope of the investigation? Number 3, what is the time frame of the investigation? Number 4, what are the goals of the investigation? Number 5, will this investigation include finding out about the Shanika Fleming firing, because this was an essential part of why this was called. So at the end of the day, those 5 questions need to be answered. And I have a question for Councilman Jackson to find out what is the status of the legislative audit, because that's a whole nother situation that I think the taxpayers need to have answers to. Thank you.
Thank you. We have the, okay. Councilman Jackson's guest is here. We're
Have
going
the
to
bells
pause for
arrived
that.
yet? Y'all can come on up to the podium, please. Clerk, can you read Resolution 120 for me, please?
A resolution dedicating the 400 block of East 75th Street in honor of Mary Louise Bell Moore, and otherwise providing with respect thereto. Whereas the Shreveport City Council acknowledged the significant impact of individuals who selflessly dedicate their lives to the betterment of their communities. Whereas one such exceptional individual was Mary Louise Bell Moore, affectionately known as Mel Louise, who was born October 9, 1999 in Gale, Louisiana, to the late Jenny Bowers and Cephas Bell. Whereas Mary Louise Moore's journey led her to Cedar Grove, Louisiana, where she resided on East 75th Street for over 70 years, displaying an unwavering commitment to nurturing her neighborhood and making lasting difference. Whereas her deep-rooted belief in providing food, safety, and promising future to every individual fueled her passionate efforts to provide meals to numerous children and families facing hardships in Cedar Grove, and through her food distribution incentives. Whereas, she's not only nourished bodies, but also nourished hope, spreading warmth and comfort throughout the community. Whereas Mary Louise Moore's dedication extended beyond providing meals, as she fiercely intervened in lives of young boys and girls heading down the wrong path, offering words of encouragement and guidance, and leaving a profound mark on the community. Whereas her wisdom and conversations continue to be cherished by many, and her impact on the community is remembered as a time where crime rates were lower. Whereas her legacy serves as a beacon of hope, compassion, and unity, and the Shreveport City Council joins the Cedar Grove community in honoring the immeasurable impact of Mary Louise Moore's extraordinary life and her unwavering commitment with this dedication. Now therefore be it resolved by the City of Shreveport and due regular session convened that the mayor, on behalf of the city, is authorized to dedicate the 400 block of East 75th Street in honor of Mary Louise Bell Moore.
On behalf of the Bells, thank y'all very much, and we appreciate it. Bye.
Ms. Bell, I do want to speak on the behalf of Commissioner Stefan, who couldn't be here, but he was very instrumental in this process. He's spoken with your family on tremendous times, and so he wanted to make sure that we're able to honor your mother and keep that memory alive. The spirit she has still resonates in the Cedar Grove community, and so we definitely appreciate everything she has done to the community, and we appreciate your family for keeping it going. So we're going to come down and take a picture. I'm going to ask the chair to join me, and also ask the mayor to join me in taking this picture and commemorating this celebration. Thank you.
Thank you. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
Thank you. Thank you. How you doing? See you later.
Thank you. We have the following executive appointments to consider today. ZBA Jacoby Marshall. Moved by the chair. Moved by the chair, second by Councilman Jackson. Are there any questions or comments? How do I get my screen back? Next, we have Director of the Department of Information and Technology.
I moved to postpone. Mr. Mayor, I wanted to postpone for 2 weeks. I actually didn't have an opportunity to vet. I have some more questions that I want to ask her. So we want to postpone for 2 weeks.
have some other questions that I want to ask in the IT department of Ms. Henderson and get an opportunity to talk to her.
Moved by Councilwoman Taylor, second by Councilwoman Bowman. Moved by Councilwoman Taylor, second by Councilwoman Bowman. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button for postponement.
Motion passes with 7.
Okay. Shreveport Implementation and Redevelopment Authority, the mayor has asked that that be postponed. Moved by Councilman Jackson, second by Councilman Butcher. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion passes with 7.
Next, we have the Community Development City of Shreveport Local Workforce Development Board. The appointee serving for a 3-year term starting September 26, 2023, September 26, 2026. Jay Johnson. Is it okay if we do all of them together? Madam Clerk, would you call all the names off and we'll just do all of them together?
Jay Johnson, Marla Mitchell, Justin Tinson, Gloria Washington, and Stephanie Yarbarba.
Moved by Councilman Jackson, second by Councilwoman Bowman. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion passes with 7.
Thank you. There are no items on the consent agenda for introductions or to be adopted. Madam Clerk, would you please proceed with regular agenda legislation?
Resolution 166 of 2021, a resolution in support of and establishing a TIF district, a proposed public improvement district wholly within the city limits of the city of Shreveport, and need a motion to postpone.
I'm going to ask for a motion to postpone. The mayor and I have had a conversation. We're going to postpone this item until the first council meeting in November. Moved by Councilman Jackson, second by Councilwoman Bowman. Are there any questions or comments? If not, would you push the button?
Motion passes with 7.
Resolution 114, authorizing a contract between the City of Shreveport and the Independence Bowl Foundation relative to the production of the Independence Bowl.
So moved.
Moved by Councilwoman Taylor. Second by Councilman Talaferro. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion passes with 7.
Resolution 115, authorizing the mayor to execute a CEA with the parish of Caddo relative to storm damage reimbursement.
Moved by Councilman Talaferro, second by Councilman Butcher. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion passes with 7.
Resolution 116, to retain the services of and appropriate funds to compensate a special legal counsel pursuant to Resolution Number 109A of 2023.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Butcher, second by Councilwoman Bowman. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion passes with 6.
Resolution 117, a resolution for the certification of compliance with the State of Louisiana Off-System Bridge Replacement Program.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Butcher. Second by Councilman Teleferro. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion passes with 7.
Resolution 118, dedicating the 2100 block of Wyoming Street in honor of Edward Julius Caesar.
So moved.
Moved by Councilwoman Taylor, second by Councilwoman Bowman. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion passes with 7.
Resolution 119, to recognize Cindy Dyer and to otherwise provide with respect thereto.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I don't think Ms. Dyer is here. I'd like to make a substitute motion to postpone.
Moved by Councilman Butcher, second by Councilman Jackson to postpone. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion passes with 7 on the substitute motion.
Resolution 120, dedicating the 400 block of East 75th Street in honor of Mary Louise, Mella Louise Belmore.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Jackson, second by Councilman Butcher. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion passes with 7.
We have no resolutions for introduction. Madam Clerk, would you proceed with introduction of ordinance not to be adopted prior to October 11, 2023?
Ordinance 112, declaring a public emergency in connection with the emergency repairing of high-service pump number 1-15 at the Amos Water Treatment Plant. Ordinance 113, to amend various articles and sections in the City of Shreveport, UDC, for the purpose of adding new definitions and regulations for abandoned signs. Ordinance 114, to amend various articles and sections in the City of Shreveport, Louisiana, UDC, for the purpose of adding new queuing and vehicle stacking area requirements. Ordinance 115, to amend various articles and sections in the City of Shreveport, Louisiana, UDC, for the purpose of clarifying and updating various code provisions. Ordinance 116, zoning case number 23-123-C, an ordinance to amend the official zoning map of the City of Shreveport, UDC, by rezoning property located east side of Lake Shore Drive, approximately 230 feet south of Dale League Drive, from R-17 Single Family Residential Zoning District to C-1 Neighborhoods Commercial Zoning District. Ordinance 117, zoning case number 23-155-C, an ordinance to amend the official zoning map of the City of Shreveport, UDC, by rezoning property located on the northeast corner of Cotton Street and McNeil Street from D-1-CBD Downtown Core Subdivision to D1 HC Downtown Heavy Commercial Subdistrict. Ordinance 118, zoning case number 23-150-C, an ordinance to amend the official zoning map of the city of Shreveport, UDC, by rezoning property located on the east side of Linwood Avenue, approximately 160 feet north of 83rd Street, from R-1-7 Single Family Residential District to C-1 Neighborhood Commercial Zoning District.
So move for introduction.
Moved by Councilman Butcher,
Second.
second by Councilwoman Taylor for introductions. Are there any questions or comments on any of these items? They have been introduced. Madam Clerk, would you proceed with ordinance on second reading and final passage?
Ordinance 74, authorizing an encroachment into the city's public right-of-way located at 813 King Place as more fully described herein, and to provide the mayor or his designee to execute an encroachment permit with JDRO Properties LLC. And this is to be withdrawn.
Yes, ma'am. And how do we do that? Since it's really not my legislation to withdraw, this is an administrative piece of legislation.
Just a
I can make a motion to withdraw it. Okay, I make a motion to withdraw.
Moved by Councilman Butcher, second by Councilman Jackson to withdraw. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button to withdraw.
Motion passes with 7.
Ordinance 83, amending the 2023 budget for the general fund relative to funding for the police department.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Butcher, second by Councilman Farrell. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion passes with 7.
Ordinance 93, amending the 2023 general fund budget to appropriate storm damage revenues and expenditures.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Butcher, second by Councilman Brooks. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion passes with 7.
Ordinance 94, to amend the 2023 budget for the general fund to increase the general government appropriation for solid waste enterprise.
Moved by Councilman Farrell, second by Councilwoman Bowman. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion passes with 7.
Ordinance 95, amending the 2023 general fund budget to revise estimated revenues.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Butcher, second by Councilman Brooks. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion passes with 7.
Ordinance 96, amending the 2023 budget for the general fund to revise appropriations for the executive office.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Butcher, second by Councilman Jackson. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion passes with 7.
Ordinance 97, amending the 2023 budget for the general fund to revise appropriations for the finance department.
Moved by Councilman Jackson, second by Councilwoman Bowman. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion passes with 7.
Ordinance 98, amending the 2023 budget for the general fund to revise appropriations within the Human Resource Department. There is one amendment. This amendment transfers an additional $5,000 from personal services to improvements and equipments to allow for the purchase of entrance security equipment for the HR department.
So moved on amendment.
Moved by Councilman Butcher, second by Councilman Jackson on the amendment. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
And so moved as amended.
Motion passes with 7 on the amendment.
Motion on the ordinance as amended by Councilman Butcher, second by Councilman Jackson. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion passes with 7.
Ordinance 99, amending the 2023 budget for the general fund to revise appropriations for the fire department.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Butcher. Second by Councilman Teleferro. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion passes with 7.
Ordinance 100, amending the 2023 budget for the general fund to revise appropriations for the police department.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Teleferro on the
Oh,
amendment.
I'm
On the
sorry, there
amendment.
is an amendment.
Okay, read the amendment.
The ordinance as drafted contained an error, which the amendment corrects. The incorrect expense characters were being amended.
Moved by Councilman Teleferro on the amendment, second by Councilman Butcher. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion passes with 7.
Ordinance 101.
Motion on the, I need a
So
motion
moved on the amendment.
on the ordinance
So moved on the ordinance
as amended.
Thank you.
Moved by Councilman Butcher, second by Councilman Teleferro. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion passes with 7.
Ordinance 101, amending the 2023 budget for general fund to revise appropriations for the city marshal.
Moved by Councilman Teleferro, second by Councilwoman Bowman. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion passes with 7.
Ordinance 102, amending the 2023 budget for the general fund to revise appropriations for city courts.
Moved by Councilman Jackson, second by Councilman Brooks. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion passes with 7.
Ordinance 103, amending the 2023 budget for the general fund to revise appropriations for the information technology department.
Moved by Councilman Jackson. Second by Councilwoman Bowman. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion passes with 7.
Ordinance 104, amending the 2023 budget for the general fund to revise appropriations for the property standards department.
Moved by Councilman Brooks, second by Councilman Butcher. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion passes with 7.
Ordinance 105, amending the 2023 budget for the general fund to revise appropriations for the Public Works Department.
Moved by Councilman Jackson on the amendment.
What is the amendment?
There's not an amendment.
There was one on there. Okay, second.
Moved by Councilman Jackson, second by Councilman Butcher. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion passes with 7.
Ordinance 106, amending the 2023 budget for the general fund to provide supplemental funding and revise appropriations for parks and recreation. There is one amendment. This amendment provides funding to pay for the remediation of water damage at Millennium Studios caused by a heavy rain event. Insurance will pay all but $455,000 deductible.
Moved by Councilman Jackson on the amendment, second by Councilwoman Bowman. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion passes with 7 on the amendment.
As amended.
Moved on the ordinance as amended by Councilman Jackson, second by Councilwoman Bowman. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion passes with 7 as amended.
Ordinance 107, amending the 2023 budget for the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund.
So moved.
Moved by Councilwoman Taylor, second by Councilwoman Bowman and Councilman Taylor-Farrell. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion passes with 7.
Ordinance 108, amending the 2023 budget for the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund.
So moved.
Moved by Councilwoman Taylor, second by Councilwoman Bowman. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion passes with 7.
Ordinance 109, amending the 2023 budget for the Airports Enterprise Fund.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Butcher, second by Councilman Brooks. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion passes with 7.
Ordinance 110 to amend Chapter 58, Article 2 of the City of Shreveport, Louisiana Code of Ordinances relative to noise and to otherwise provide with respect thereto. Is there a motion to postpone?
With the request from moved by Councilman Jackson to be postponed, the City Attorney's Acts. Motion by
Second.
Councilman Jackson, second by Councilwoman Taylor, question by Councilman Taylor-Farrell.
Yes, sir. If I may, can I get Chief Smith to come to the podium? Chief, how are you? Just a couple of quick questions. One, have you had an opportunity to actually to read the ordinance revisions?
I have.
And what is your conclusion? Do you agree, or you're in favor? You think it's you can implement it within reason?
I think it gives us some good measurements to try to mediate the issues that are happening in that area. And if we can't mediate the issues, then some actions that we can take, yes.
Chief? Unless you're
No, go ahead.
As always, it's our intent to try to mediate issues and come to an agreement, something that everyone can live with as best they can before we take any other actions.
So just to follow up, and is that, do we have the necessary equipment to actually follow through with the enforcement if necessary?
Yes, we do. A little while back, we ordered a couple of very good, very expensive sound level detecting devices to give us something to work with, yes.
Chief, or Mr. Chairman. Chief, yesterday we discussed, and I may have been a little bit harsh about the congregating on the street. But in your, were you down there Saturday night?
Not Saturday night, but Friday night.
So from what you're getting from your officers on the street on Saturday night, I'm sure that y'all briefed on it. Was there an, there's a certain amount of occupancy that can happen on that rooftop.
Yes.
Did the music and the level of the music contribute to the congregation on the street, in your officer's opinion?
I would have to say yes, it was. The times that I have been down there, it was quite obvious to me that in the distance, people could hear and enjoy the entertainment and did not have any intent whatsoever with patronizing any of the businesses. Just they were able to party on the parking lots.
So it would make, I was kind of hard yesterday whenever I said, it's our responsibility because they're congregating on the street. This noise ordinance would help you to be able to do your job to disperse the crowds before they get too large.
Absolutely. This year alone, 2023, SPD had responded to 473 calls for services within that 4-block area of where the entertainment is located. And I can give you specifics about what blocks and each street that is coming from, but if you would center Texas Street and Spring Street and go a block either way, that amounts to 473 calls for services this year alone.
In that one block, or two blocks?
That is correct. And, the thing about it, we look at all the demands for service, and many of them are not specific to a specific business. People out on the streets, out on the sidewalks, don't know the address of any of the businesses, but they'll see the sign that gives them an idea, the 400 block, 200 blocks, so generally that's what they call in, but 473 responses this year alone, I would say, is a little bit excessive for the area.
Well, I'm for giving you, and I've said this over and over again, and I think we've all said this, that we'll give the police department whatever they need to fight crime. If this is a tool that you need and you feel like you need it now, then I'm for not postponing it. That's just what my thought is after hearing from the residents of downtown and the business owners from downtown and Liz, who was speaking more as a resident, as the DDA director. I just think that I don't know how we can tweak this anymore and be able to still enforce it. And at some point, you're going to have to start enforcing the one on the books, or we can enforce this new one, which I think is more favorable to the businesses.
I've been down there several times, have had the opportunity to meet with some of the businesses' managers and the owners, and without this ordinance not knowing specifics, I've tried to mediate. I've taken people out to where I think halfway between your business, and say, be reasonable. If I can hear your sound at this point, then you're too loud. If I can hear yours at this point, let's try to work together. And obviously that has not had much effect. I've walked around to all of the establishments pretty much down there, and the ones where the entertainment, the music is being played from the inside, not a problem. None of them whatsoever. You get a few feet outside the businesses and you can't tell what's going on inside. It's just that which is played outside that resonates throughout the downtown area. And I'm not just talking about the one block where they located, blocks and blocks and blocks away.
Because there's a minimum occupancy of those buildings, and if there's a lot of people down there, then they have to go to the street, basically, because they can't get on top of the building or in the building or outside, whatever. So there's only one place to go, and that's to congregate on the street.
As a matter of fact, many of my officers told me that Saturday night, many were outside that had no intent to purpose to patronize the building, but were perched and looking up at the entertainment or listening to it as it occurs.
I think to a certain extent this is more of a public safety emergency, and I'm not for delaying this. I would prefer us to go ahead and vote for it, but that's just my preference.
Yes, sir.
What is, thank you, Chief, Modern Tech. I appreciate you bringing the statistics of the calls for service. What is the average call for service year to date in that particular square block area that you just cited? I mean, do you have that? If you don't, that's fine. It was just, no. I know the number. I was looking for the actual call for service.
On Texas Street, one block west of Spring Street, 161 calls this year. On Spring Street, just south of Texas Street, 44 calls. At the very intersection of Texas and Spring Street, 71 calls. Texas Street east of Spring Street, 66 calls. And Spring Street north of Texas Street, 131 calls.
And do you have any information on exactly what calls they were? Were they loitering? Was it loud music? Were there disturbances? Do you have any kind of data on that? Just an
Everything
average?
that you can imagine.
Okay. So just general calls for service regarding the whole gamut.
Everything that you can imagine.
Thank you, sir.
And I don't have it here with me today for the past, well, yes, I do. Following the shooting that occurred, we managed to deploy extra people in that area, nearly some 16 or so officers each Friday and Saturday night. And for the first 8 weeks of that operation, just in the downtown area, 53 felony arrests were made, 96 misdemeanor arrests, nearly 400 traffic stops, took several juveniles into custody for being out after curfew, executed 56 warrants, seized 27 illegally possessed weapons, and the narcotics that were seized is too much for me to talk about, but quite a bit of narcotics was seized. Wrote 93 parking tickets. So SPD has been very aggressive in enforcing the laws that we could in that area, because that's what the community asks for. But you know, in order to go further, this ordinance would strengthen what we can do. And keep in mind, as I said earlier, mediation, try to resolve things, is always a better way before enforcement actions are taken.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if the city attorney can come up as well. Chief, don't go anywhere. My concerns is with this noise ordinance, we spend a lot of time focusing on downtown, but this noise ordinance won't just focus on downtown. We have several other venues that have outdoor spaces, and even though to my knowledge there have been no complaints, if this noise ordinance is passed, anybody can just say they're in violation of the law because they're over 50 decimeters. So I want to make sure that we're paying attention to that. The word grandfather in has been thrown around a lot. But I do want to make sure that everybody has a happy median. We have some spaces where there is no complaints, nobody lives there, all the businesses are closed at that particular time, and then we have downtown area where we have a mixed space. So I do want to be courteous to their needs as well. But I also want to have full transparency. 50 decimeters, where did that come from? How loud is that, or how low is that? Is that conducive for the club that's going to be affected the most, Club Hayes? Is that conducive for them to continue to have an outdoor space? I want to make sure that we're clear in what we're trying to pass, because those things are important to me. I can't speak for the rest of the council, but those things are important to me. And if we need to test that, and my last concern is when we talk about noise, if you have 300, 400 people just talking, will that equate to 50 decimeters, not even including music? So once we add music and people talking and laughing, will that space be able to reasonably operate at 50 decimeters? So I just kind of wanted to make sure we're testing those things out in real time before we're just out here trying to vote on something, not knowing what 50 decimeters sounds like.
I have the same questions.
Thank you very much, Councilman Jackson, for the question. This is questions regarding where the decimeter levels comes from. We used, and this part of the question could probably be better answered by Assistant City Attorney Gracia Degage. But we used certain templates from other jurisdictions that had some decimeter levels. We also got some information from Ms. Swain that was contributed while we were in the drafting process. It had a listing of the decimeter levels and what they are compared to in terms of normal speech, in terms of shouting, each level of on a meter, what kind of discussion, what kind of sound, what kind of noise that corresponds to. I believe that came from the Louisiana Department of Health, if I remember correctly. And we used actually there were decimeter levels as well in the current noise ordinance that we also consulted when we were creating the new noise ordinance. Most of the work that was done, it doesn't pertain to specifically the levels of sound. Most of it pertains to who the enforcement body for the city of Shreveport for noise enforcement is. What tools can they use? What is the permitting process? How do we go about creating a plan for the sound in a location that already has a patio permit? Regarding the term grandfathered and the discussion on that, which I believe at the last meeting we entered into that discussion with Councilwoman Taylor. First of all, there is a permit for the patio permit, which is the anytime there's an outdoor entertainment venue, they have to get a patio permit in order to provide entertainment outside. That's where the discussion about grandfathering lives. It has to do with the patio permit, which is the permit that my understanding is Club Hayes already has, and there are other venues that already have it, but Club Hayes already has that one. The noise permit itself, the outside sound amplification device permit, which would be created by the ordinance, Club Hayes and no venue would be being grandfathered into that because it's a new permit. So that would be a new permit that would have to be applied for by anybody who wants to operate a sound amplification device outside. But in order to do that, you would have to already have the patio permit, which the owner of Club Hayes currently has, and we wouldn't touch that at this stage. Okay, so that's that's why we're ready and able to have conversations with this council and anybody else who's interested, because there are some rather technical specifics that need to be sort of walked through for people, and that's what we're happy to do. That's what I'm hoping I'm doing here today. Did you have further questions, Councilman Jackson and Councilwoman Taylor?
I do.
Yes.
So have you all met with all of these club owners to go over this noise ordinance with them? Because I think that they need to have a full understanding of what is being presented to them. You change an ordinance, not everyone knows what the changes will be and how that will affect them. I think it needs to be an example of the sound, so everybody there would be on one accord. I think that there needs to be a place where you explain to those particular club owners what all of this really means, what are the consequences of that if they're violating, and for me, what is the definition of noise?
I'll attempt to answer the last question first. In this particular instance, I think we're just talking, I'm confident that we're just talking about sound amplification, okay? So, it's obviously we're colloquially calling it the noise ordinance, but what we're really talking about is anytime you have a sound amplification device played outside, that is what we're measuring. And my understanding is the technology has ways to sort of cancel out background sound, background noise. In answer to your question about the conversations, the people that are talking outside, my understanding is that the technology has a way to hone in and focus on the sound amplifying device itself. There's also a distance element to that equation, which was what the chief was talking about when he said that he tried to, in the past, go to where he considered to be a fair neutral location in between the two establishments that we're here talking about. He tried to go there and measure the sound in one direction, measure the sound in the other direction, and explain to them what the sound was doing in terms of what level it was at in the neutral ground, and to try to explain to them, okay, so now we know that the sound, that we've got this much sound coming from this direction, this much sound coming from that direction, especially when you have directionally focused sound amplification devices. All of that can be ascertained with the technology.
And for the record, since you brought up Club Hayes, since they've had their patio license for 5 years, those are the club owners or individual or buildings that have outdoor patio. Are they fully aware of this as well? Because I think understanding is very, very important when you're talking about this. And even when you're talking about this and you're saying that this affects throughout the city, I think there has to be very good understanding of what we're doing here, because some think that if they violate this noise ordinance, then later we're opening the door to take away their liquor license. Is that on the table?
The way it's currently written, that's not what, the way it's currently written, you could lose your sound amplification license if you were a frequent violator.
So
and there are ways you can lose your patio permit as well. You know, I have not looked into the connection between this and the liquor license. We thought about tying this directly to the liquor license when we were drafting and decided not to go in that direction. And so that is not the intention, that we would tie frequent violations of the sound ordinance to your liquor license. It was designed to be specifically about sound.
So as I understand that you're going to meet with club owners this week. For me, Councilman Butcher, until everyone has a full understanding of what the city is doing with this, I am asking for a postponement, because I think understanding is critical, so everyone would know, so you won't be at the point of saying you did not know what was going to happen here as far as this is concerned.
Mr. Chair, one last point. You mentioned when we're using the sound amplification device, there could be a distance from the speaker, and it's up to the chief to find that happy median. Is that subjective? Is that in the ordinance? How do we determine where I'm gonna just say like a radar gun, where he decides to point that radar gun to start that process?
That was him trying to mediate the situation.
In the ordinance, it gives the property line as a distance. So, for instance, and I don't clearly understand how the commercial property is from downtown, but like Club Hayes, for instance, the furthest point to their property line is what I would use, not necessarily the building that they butt up to, or any other
So you'll just be right outside on their property line and then do the gun to see what the sound magnifies at that particular point.
You start backwards. It's kind of how it's done. You go to the source with the amplification device, and it is, at that point, it's not recording anything but that source, and you see what that reading is. You walk away to the property line, and when you get to that point, you're still recording that reading. And if that reading is above the law, then the business is in violation.
And we have these devices now.
Yes, sir.
Do we have any idea what the readings are now? Have we tested them out?
No, sir, I have not. No, sir.
Okay.
But I do have the devices now, and would be more than willing to meet with any of the business owners during their time of business and let them see where the limit needs to be, where their volume needs to be.
So they haven't been tested?
No.
The decibel meters?
Yes, the instruments have to make sure that they work when I got them, but not in the downtown area because of the ordinance didn't allow us to do so at that time.
Chief,
But what I'm saying, I'd be happy
I'm just
to
trying,
meet
I want to
with-
get an example as to where we are now. If they're at 100, 150, 75, I'm just trying to get a
A gauge.
A gauge,
So
exactly,
I
thank
said
you.
I'd be happy to meet with any of them during their business hours, get to that point on the property line, let them look at the thing, and let them play with the amplification device to see where you need to be within the limits of the law.
So
Does
Chief,
that kind of make sense?
yes, so
Yes, sir.
Chief, when the city attorney go and talk to these business owners, could you all coordinate, whereas you would be there as well to basically say to them what you just said to us? So that they would have a good understanding?
Absolutely.
Just to be clear, that meeting will not take place during their business hours. It'll take place during normal business hours. I got small children. I will not
Okay, Chief.
be there when they are in operation.
We'll meet with them at that point.
Okay,
and-
Chief, well, you
I
meet
would
and you
devote myself
you
to
tell them
go
what
during
happened.
their
Yeah,
hours.
you
Yes.
tell them what happened.
I think you need to come so we can get the full effect.
So one last question, Chief, and then, right now, what does the ordinance say as it's written right now, since you have the tools in place?
65 and 50, or 60 and 50 during certain hours. They give, I think, 12-hour spans. I think the 60 or 65, I'm not sure, is from 7 to 11:59, and then after that, it will go to 50 or 55.
50, 55.
Yeah, I may have them backwards, but I know it's a 12-hour span.
And I guess, I understand Councilwoman Taylor, and I would assume that even if this were passed today, that you would work with these businesses before you just started issuing citations for noise, to make sure that they understood exactly where you were coming from, the readings, all of that, before we just start arbitrarily going in and issuing. I would hope that we would work with them if this were not to be postponed and passed. My issue with this is, we passed legislation a couple of years ago. I can't remember if Councilwoman Taylor was on the council at that point or not, or if it was Councilman Bradford, but we passed legislation to require a certain amount of cameras in local bars and other establishments. I think Councilman Nicholson sponsored that legislation. We shut down a bar for almost a year because that bar owner did not have the proper cameras less than a year after we passed that legislation. We shut his business down. There were council members that are on this council that said, I don't want to drive by there and see a light on in that bar. His argument at the time was, I didn't know. I don't recall us ever going to every bar and sitting down and saying, okay, this is the camera requirements, this is where you need to put them, this is like that. So I do remember you and I having a conversation that when liquor licenses are renewed, you should put any new legislation that comes in with their application to renew their liquor license, stating, okay, we have a camera ordinance, here's where the cameras should be, and then they can't say, well, we didn't know. So I agree with what you're saying, Councilwoman Taylor. But I also am still not for delaying it. I'm just saying that we need to be more business friendly to the business owners that we're putting these ordinances out on, where they kind of understand what they're going, what's happening. And I would also, like I said, hope that the first 2 to 3 weekends of this being passed, that y'all aren't going to just go out there and start shutting down businesses and taking liquor license and all that kind of stuff. But it's up to the council. Thank you.
Sure. And I understand exactly what you're saying. And, we inspect everyone before a permit is ever issued. And anyone that wishes to get into a business where SPD regulates, prior to the application, is welcome to come to police headquarters, talk with one of the agents to get a clear understanding of what is required. We would love to do that. I think that makes perfectly good sense.
I just think that I recall when we did shut that business down for almost a year, that a lot of the reason we shut them down was due to the fact the cameras and the camera ordinance had changed recently, and there was no new application. It was a renewal of an application, and that business owner's business was shut down for 10 or 11 months. And I just want us to, if we're going to pass legislation, the business owner has a certain level of responsibility to know the ordinances that are on their business, but we also have a responsibility to pass it on to the business owner.
What is 50 decibels?
Ma'am?
What's 50 decibels?
That is a pressure reading from sound that's emitted.
So in my
That's what
simple
the
mind, how
DBS
loud is that?
I don't know without having a,
You getting a ticket?
You getting a ticket, you go, Chief.
I wish I would have brought one of the meters with me today. I
Yeah.
apologize for
Well,
not.
Chief, is there a way for you to use, say, this 2 weeks as a test, and then be able to bring us back to report on the next council meeting that you all would, since we have not used the meters to test it, that you would test it out for 2 weeks, and then we'll have a feel of what you're saying, and then bring the meters with you for the next council meeting?
But I do think within those 2 weeks that we need to have those owners, they can come to the chamber where we're explaining to them what this ordinance is and how that affects their business. I think within those 2 weeks that we need to arrange to be able to do that, and we can have Mr. Johnson that can arrange and put it out for those particular business owners to be able to have a full understanding of what this noise ordinance means and what it means for their business. Because if we say that we open for business in Shreveport and we want to do good business, then we need to tell them what it is that is prospectively going to change with their business.
Absolutely. I got no problem at all with that.
And Chief, I just want to make sure that we're not shutting down the business by simply passing the ordinance.
Correct.
That's
You're giving them-
important because, you know, to me, the happy medium would be is to play with it, to see what's conducive for them to enjoy that patio space with people there, but still be respectable to the residents. And that may be above 50 decimeters. I don't know. But at the same time, I want the same show of force that you've done for my district in the problem that I'm having with downtown while we work through this noise ordinance, because I do believe that the noise may be one contributor, but I don't think that's the only contributor. Once we send a message that no loitering is allowed at all,
Correct.
I don't think anybody is going to be there. The last point I'm making, if we're going to be able to hear the music from the rooftop, which you've already said it's impossible not to hear the music from the rooftop, then again, let me say this for the record. This noise ordinance does not stop that loitering problem.
That's
If I
right.
can hear it, whether it's at 50 or at 100, I'm going to still be outside enjoying the music. Why? Because I can hear it. So if we get into the point where we're turning down the music so low that you can't hear it from the outside of the club, that it means the people enjoying it won't be able to enjoy it because it's going to be too low. So I just want to make sure that we're looking at all that in order to try to come to that happy median. And then I'm more than happy to work with anybody to make sure that we find that happy median.
Friday night when I was in that area, coming down Spring Street, there at Texas Street, I could hear the music just as clear on Spring Street, some nearly 50, 60 feet away from that business, as if I was inside the business. And it just don't seem right for people using that state or federal highway to have to endure something that they don't want to. That just makes good sense to me. You know, whether you enjoy the music, whether you like it or not is irrelevant, but you got the right to travel down that state highway with your family, whatever time of day or night it is, and not be exposed to something that may be contrary to your interests.
Bringing that point up, I've watched some of the videos. I didn't watch them all, honestly, but some of the language of the music, I don't necessarily think I would want. I don't have any, anyway, I don't have any young children, but I wouldn't want my young children being exposed to that language. And I know but you are on the street. If you had your window rolled down, you could definitely hear it.
With your window rolled up, you could hear. It's right.
All right.
And like I said, we don't want to hinder nobody from conducting their business, but just be reasonable with it. Try to respect as best you can the rights of others who are traveling through the area that they ain't coming downtown, they're just going home.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes.
The motion on the floor is to postpone.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a couple more comments. I'd like
Oh,
to
yes, sir. Go ahead.
Mr. Edwards? Not so fast. You were directly responsible for developing this, or partially developing this ordinance, were you not?
My office was.
Yes, that's correct. And this ordinance was created based on data, not opinions. Is that correct?
It's created based upon data. It's created based upon research. It was created based upon the urgings of the chief of police and the beat cops that work in that area, and their experience with these areas, based upon the input from certain members of the community who had a vested interest. And I've also, my office has also taken into account the input from certain nightclub owners who sent information in, which include both the owner of Sandbar and the owner of Hayes. All of that has been taken into account as we went about the process of drafting this ordinance.
Okay,
Oh,
and
and I'm sorry, let me
no, go
also,
ahead, please.
let me also say that the way that the current ordinance is written, the noise enforcement officer is a individual within the engineering department who has a great amount of experience with developing sound plans and the measurement of sound because of his position for many, many years. And one of the reasons why we were waiting is to make sure that we got his input as well as we went about this process, because there is a companion ordinance that takes all of the engineering sound information and puts it in another place of the code. So I wanted that was also taken into account as we were drafting this ordinance.
Thank you. In a previous statement, you mentioned technical specifics, and that's really kind of what I'm after. The technical specifics, we're talking the decibel levels and so forth, correct?
That's correct.
They are what they are. There are other cities that do the same thing that obviously enforce the decibel levels the same way. So we're not reinventing the wheel. We're not developing something that has never been developed before. This is not sheer conjecture. This is actually data-driven. Am I correct to assume that?
That is correct. And although it looked like I was trying to skirt off, what I was trying to do was pull up. I've got an email. I have in my email somewhere a chart that delineates what different decimal levels are corresponding to when it comes to conversational language, shouting, yelling, singing, that sort of thing. I have that somewhere, and as soon as I can put my hands on it, I'll make sure that the council has it at their disposal as well.
Because in my experience, this is not new technology. This technology has been around for a long time. We're just catching up. In your research, have you come across cities who have implemented this technology, in other words, this type of enforcement, who because of whatever have been forced to basically back off or abandon this process because of technical issues?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. All right. I'm very supportive of implementing this ordinance. I know, and I agree with Councilman Taylor, is that there's an educational process. I don't believe we can, I believe it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we do educate, obviously, the members of the council and the members of those people who are being directly affected. I agree with Chief Smith, is that we're not putting anybody out of business. This is all about law enforcement, and that is what we should be focused on. I think we can do both. I think we can actually pass the ordinance today, and then we have the learning curve, not the learning curve, that's the wrong statement. I think we have the educational process we can do in 2 weeks or whatever the time is necessary to bring all the people directly involved so they have a better, fulfilling understanding of the ordinance. I think the ordinance is well written. I've read it a couple of times, and that's the reason I went with the technical data. The data doesn't change. The research is out there, and I do appreciate the work, the due diligence that you did, both of you did, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
So I'm gonna go back
Chair.
on what Mr. Sample said. One of the individuals that spoke, when he talked about the range was 88 to 89, and you're saying 50 decibels, which is the equivalent, when we Google, of a quiet conversation. So is the rooftop or these particular patios supposed to be quiet?
I think the 50 was from the current ordinance. I think.
So in the
when
new
a-
ordinance, what's the decibel reading?
I'd have to pull it up. I'm not looking at it right now. Ms. Gracia Degage, do you have it pulled up?
I've got it here somewhere.
So with the prospective ordinance for downtown or any entertainment, restaurant, bar, et cetera, establishments from 7 a.m. to midnight, it would be 65, and from midnight to 7 a.m., it would be 55.
You want them to have a quiet storm?
And see, I think those things are looking at it that most of the businesses had sound on the inside. So when you're on the outside, you can't hear the music from the inside, but we're dealing with an outdoor
Outside
space.
venue.
And there's also some other possibilities that we haven't had an opportunity to really explore, but there are sound muting, temporary walls that could be put up around.
That's
There
what I'm
are-
saying again, why I think the educational piece of going in and talking to the business owners is very, very important. Because when you go over here, and as Councilman Teleferro talks about the data, and you go over and you look at the technical components of this, then what are we really saying for this particular business when we consider to say what is noise? When you go and you register and you talk about 50 decibels on the inside, it's like a quiet conversation. On the outside, or we don't want to hear in simple terms that I don't need to hear your music where my body is radiating, or where it is disturbing the people that's around me, that I can clearly hear the words that are being spoken. Are we saying that? What's the decibel reading for that? And so when we go to implement this, because keep in mind, as we talk about the business component of the other businesses down there, we're also looking at how we impede these businesses that are already existing, that have these patios. You don't have just Hayes, you have the Remington, you have other outdoor venues that are here. And so I believe that it is very important to have that educational piece, because I'm not in the club business. I don't have a rooftop. I know when music is too loud, or when my pictures are vibrating on the wall, that I know your music is too loud from Forward Park. That's my measure in coming downtown of what it is that you hear. And that's why I'm saying that I think it needs to be postponed, get all of the business owners in here, especially those that have patios, so they will clearly understand and that they have a concerted effort in what it is that we're doing and what the real impact is. If they're not here, then they have to go along with whatever it is that this council body decides.
And to be clear, as we're moving into implementation, past today, past in 2 weeks, past whenever, as we're moving into implementation, there would have to be a permit process erected. Once that permit process is erected, then people would have to apply for the permit. And one of the things that would take place in that is we're going to discuss your sound plan. And that's another opportunity for us to go through and say, okay, in order for you to be able to play your music and have live shows outside, some of this is for not just for like live DJs, it could be for live performances and that sort of thing as well. As we're talking through that, it might be necessary to have a discussion about sound canceling, temporary walls and that sort of thing in order to get them to a place where there's compliance. So that's certainly contemplated in getting this ordinance implemented, is an opportunity to work with the business owner to get them, even before we give them the permit, to get them into compliance. And my office did a lot of the work on at this stage, but in order to pull that off, that'll be the SPD that has to go through that process. So that there's going to be a handoff to SPD where they've got to figure out how to get that process set up.
So would a club that has an outdoor patio need a permit?
Yes, they would need two. They already have one, and they will need a second permit.
And I think this is an important part of the data collection process. Councilman Talaferro, you stated that we need to go ahead and move forward. But if we do that, it becomes the law. And so now we're asking all the businesses simply to adapt. What I'm asking is, I don't know if 50 decimeter is the right number. So I'm asking, let's test that. let's see if this space is still viable at 50 decimeter, or if we can raise that through a happy median, through some surveys, making sure that the residents, the business owners, and everybody can be happy with this amount, and then possibly change the ordinance to have a higher decimeter as long as it makes sense. We don't know if 50 decibels makes sense to anybody at this point. We could simply just be saying the law is going to say that you can't have a patio space at all, because any type of music on that patio space will be a violation. Nobody knows the answer to that because it has not been tested in real time. So I definitely think that we have to continue to data collect and ensure that we're making sense with this ordinance and that everybody knows what the ramification is going to be.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Councilman Jackson, your motion to postpone, is it to postpone for 2 weeks?
In respect to it, that gives SPD time to kind of test this in real time. Of the business owners, and I'm hoping that they will comply and allow SPD to conduct their quote-unquote field test so we can bring back all of the information and make some formal decisions.
Well, I think at this point, all the business owners are aware that this is on the table. So I believe Ms. Holden indicated y'all had an appointment on Thursday.
That's
Marcus?
correct.
Okay. I tend to agree with Councilman Jackson. We don't really know what 50 means. That might be a football game on a TV on a patio. I don't know. So I think it would have to be tested. I would hate to make it law and then we find out, well, nobody can comply with 50 decibels. So that being said, I'm probably going to vote to postpone.
All right.
And I'll just make one additional point just to make it. One consideration is the decibel levels. The other consideration is the time in which compliance is more and less capable, because the decibel level is 65 prior to midnight, and then it goes down. And it would probably be easier to comply if your party started when someone with small children could be there, and somewhat harder as the time goes on. So some of it might not just be changing the decibel levels or considering a change to the decibel levels. Some of it may be considering the time frame within which those decibel levels are.
Small children can't be at Shreveport Nightlife.
Thank you.
Can't
Thank
be
you.
At all.
That's not a good measuring tool.
Thank y'all very much. The motion on the floor is to postpone at this time. Push the button as to your choice.
Motion to postpone passes with 5.
Ordinance 111, amending the Code of Ordinance of the City of Shreveport to amend an Article 12 to Chapter 78 relative to noise measurement procedures.
Motion to postpone.
Moved by Councilwoman Taylor, second by Councilman Jackson to postpone. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion to postpone passes with 5.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, is there any legislation to be removed from the table today? We have no property standards or ABO appeals to consider today. We have the following MPC ZBA cases to consider today. Madam Clerk, would you read them in the record, please?
Case number 23-17 BAC is appealed by Ms. Lindsay for 1637 Laurel Street, special exception manufactured home.
It's in your district.
Mr. Clark.
Yes, ma'am.
The owner who has applied for this special exception has gone through the process of getting the support of her neighbors, correct?
That's correct. The neighbors on both sides.
Okay. So I don't want to delay this any further for her. So
I don't think it should be delayed. I think that there's a real misconception that in areas that are in need of reinvestment, that manufactured housing decreases property value. That has been proven to be a myth. We've had appraisals to go through the process and determine that they do not have a negative impact on properties.
So in that particular case, the voting in this area, should we uphold the MPC's decision?
This MPC did vote to approve.
Okay, so want to make a motion to uphold the MPC's decision, so that would be a yes vote.
Moved by Councilwoman Taylor, second by Councilman Butcher to uphold the MPC's decision. Are there any questions or comments? If not, yes, sir. No, to approve, we vote yea. Yes, sir. Any other questions? If not, push the button.
Motion passes with 7. Thank you, Mr. Clark. Would you please contact the owner and let her know that she can proceed? Okay.
All right, read the next case, Madam Clerk.
Case number 23-48C/527. It's an appeal by Ms. April for 527 Stoner Avenue, a special use permit approval of a food truck park.
Councilman Brooks.
Mr. Clark again.
Can we get a motion on the floor?
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah, we'll get it on the floor and then we'll do
Okay,
questions.
so moved.
Moved by Councilman Brooks, second by Councilman Jackson. Question.
How was the vote at the MPC on this case?
It was 4-1.
4-1
Yes,
in
sir.
favor?
In favor of, I'm sorry.
Okay, other than Mr. Taylor himself, who we haven't spoken in a while, everyone in the Highland area has reached out to me are against it, including the lady that spoke earlier, the Highland Neighborhood Association. I have some serious concerns that the food trucks will be on one side of Stoner and the parking will be on the other side. Stoner is not a good street for pedestrian traffic. So I feel like I'm going to have to vote to oppose this.
I will share with you, for whatever it's worth, that this will be a food truck park in an area that is in desperate need of services similar to what's being proposed. It is a reinvestment, redevelopment area where there's limited space. If there was adequate space, he would have provided the parking on the same side of Stoner that the food truck park is located. I think that, I travel down Stoner. I don't get out at night, Councilman Green, but I do travel during the day, and I don't see the urgency of denying this application for this young man that has invested so much in this particular area because of the possibility of traffic down Stoner. But that's your call.
Well, we just rezoned a couple of months ago, right down the street on Stoner, a pretty considerable amount of property for Mr. Taylor that has a parking lot, plenty of room for food trucks. Maybe, could I motion to postpone?
Yes, sir.
And we vote on this in 2 weeks?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I
Before you
motion
do
to
that, can we
postpone.
call Mr. Taylor up? In my comments, Mr. Clark, I definitely appreciate your comment and I respect your opinion tremendously. However, Mr. Taylor, you can come on forward to the thing. My thing is, I'm always taking a back seat to the residents of that area. I've experienced this enough in my district. What I don't want it to do is force anything on an area that has made it clear they don't want it, even if it is progressive. I think the area should have a big say-so on how their area is developed. And NPC have done similar things in my area, and my residents just wasn't for it. And it just simply created a nightmare for me as a council person. And so I want to make sure that this council hears me when I say that, you know, even though I'm a fan and I want to see the food trucks there, if that area does not want it, then that's a extremely issue. So I am for the postponement. I am see if there's people that can come before us and saying, hey, we want this in our area. But as of right now, based on what I've heard, I don't see that other than NPC or Mr. Taylor, who's going to speak now.
May I just make one more comment, sir?
Yes, sir.
That was adequate opportunity for public engagement and public participation. There was a neighborhood participation plan meeting held. There were 7 people in attendance at that meeting. When the MPC had deferred this particular case 4 times, each time only one person showed up in opposition. I think that the neighborhood has had more than adequate opportunity, if we are about being business-friendly, Councilman Butcher, to work with this gentleman to discuss the problems that they have, concerns that they have. That is the purpose of the neighborhood participation plan meeting. When they don't participate in this and just say that we just against it, they're denying, in my opinion, a business person an opportunity to develop a business in a blighted area. But I just wanted you to be clear that the MPC does not just make decisions that are in total disagreement with neighborhoods. We do everything we can to get neighborhood participation. We contact neighborhood organizations. We send out information to you. We do everything we can to get information from the persons that will be directly impacted by those decisions.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Clark? Just a follow-up.
I'm sorry, I
That's
thought
all
you
right.
wanted,
Thank you. No, I get it. Has Mr. Taylor satisfied all the requirements to have this type of venue?
He has satisfied all the requirements. All he has left to do is go before this is a historic area. He has to go before the Historic Preservation Commission to get approval from them that it meets with the character of the area as far as the historic character is concerned. But he's that's why it was deferred so many times. At first we started out with a stage where there was going to be a band, and we determined that that was just not even possible because it would be too disruptive. And after everything I've heard these 2 days about downtown Shreveport, I think we made the right decision. But we carefully considered his site plan to make sure that it was as least impactful as possible, and make sure that the circulation, the negative thing is crossing the street, but other than that, there are no negative impacts that this particular park will.
Taylor, I see that you're building a stage. You do know we get to fix to have a new noise ordinance, right?
Yeah, I was just shaking my head.
Thank you. Councilman
And you
Brooks,
can't get grandfathered in.
what's your pleasure, Councilman? Councilman Brooks, what's your pleasure?
So, Mr. Taylor, is this what it's going to look like?
Yes, I actually have a floor plan I'll pass around.
Okay, well, this is the first I've seen of this. It's very nice. I still would like the 2 weeks to postpone. Yeah.
So the motion on the floor is to postpone for 2 weeks?
If I may, can I speak?
Yes, sir.
This process has been going on since February of this year. I've spent money going through this process. I've spent time. And to continue prolonging it for an individual or individuals that didn't show up to the meeting, which I have a list of people who showed. He was made aware. He was made aware both times that he actually came and spoke in opposition. they had a chance to actually come speak and experience what we actually discussed. If he would have actually came, he would have had known what the actual park would look like. We had to make a few adjustments to the park because my draftsman, he actually had some porta potties, but we're not gonna have porta potties, we're gonna have full bathrooms. Like Mr. Allen said, I'm not trying to kick the door down and where someone don't want me to be, but the young lady who actually got up and spoke again, she didn't, nobody from the Highland neighborhood participation, they never showed up. She has yet to return any of my phone calls, any of my text messages to even speak about this. One of his concerns was parking across the street. Well, I vowed, and I've spoken to some Shreveport PD officers in the area, to actually have a Shreveport police officer in the evening time, they're present in them work hours between 5 and 9, because we were shut down at 9 o'clock every day. I would implement actual, what's it called? Not a crosswalk, valet parking. So because I'm going to do the food truck park, as I mentioned yesterday, I'm actually going to do a coffee shop next to it as well, and I want to do a breakfast brunch spot. And the development I'm trying to bring to this area is much needed. It's a blighted area that I go over and I clean up. If you want me to clean it up, well, allow me to build it up. I'm investing in that area since 2016 again. Those are some pictures that I sent you around. I know the lady said that it's not for sure whether I would uphold whatever it is that I say. If you pass by Stoner, 516 Stoner, 2 years ago when I first purchased it, the building was horrible. Found a dead body in the building before I bought it. If you look at 541 Stoner, before I bought it, crackheads was going in knocking the windows out. 539 that I also own, it was just used as an attorney's storage office. The two lots beside it, which I own, 523 and 527, well, the grass was tall as those flagpoles over there. And I went over and I cleaned that stuff up. I clean it up whenever it needs cut, and I've been doing this for over 2 years, right there on Stoner. He did mention that they rezoned a property for me at the other end of Stoner, but that's not what I want to use that property for. And I don't think that I owe him an explanation on what I want to use that property for until that time comes. But again, I've spent time, I've spent money. I don't want to be prolonged. So if you're going to vote for it, vote for it. But if you're not going to vote for it, don't vote for it. We don't have to prolong it after today. Whatever is decided, is decided.
Mr. Taylor, can you speak about the people that actually attended the meeting? Well, were there people there that were excited about this project?
Yes. So the actual neighbor who owns the property, and I'm in talks with buying his property as well. I know it sounds like I be doing a lot, but you have to buy that in order to actually get what you're trying to do, your point across. You have to own it all. And I know that I can't do it all by myself, but I don't have anybody. You have to be a real interesting person to invest in Highland, especially on Stoner. But the actual owner said that, hey, Jeremy, I just wanted to let you know that I left a message by phone with a live representative of the Metropolitan Planning Commission of Caddo Parish, since I will not be at the meeting about your food truck park. I told them I was in favor of your plan, and I still don't want to sell my property at this time. So that was Mr. Harlan. I'm trying to push him. I'm trying to push him. And again, that was one of the reasons we took out the stage, Mr. Jackson and Mr. Jim. We took out the stage because we knew it would be an issue. So I don't want to be with any noise deals. I want to be in compliance, 55 and under or 50 and under. So I did that in favor of that. But again, like you say, Mr. Jackson, if they don't want me over there, cool. If they want me over there, cool. I don't want it to be postponed.
Honestly, I love the idea, but I'm just saying that I know what it's like to have something in your district that the residents do not want. It is a headache and it's a nightmare for a council person. And that issue could be back before us after you've already spent money getting it set up. So I just wanted to make sure that you had people that participated in your meetings. When I say people, a lot of people that's saying, hey, we're excited about this development, we welcome it, and we want it. I think that is extremely, extremely important.
Well, I also spoke to the Stoner Hill Association. They were told that it was going to be in Stoner Hill, and Stoner Hill residents would appreciate something of this nature where they may not have to drive to the other end of Uri and Kings to actually go and get food or brunch or whatever's being served at the food truck park at that time. The residents that actually came to both meetings, they spoke highly in favor of it, and this is something that they want. So the residents that actually came, the people that came, could have been the mayor, could have been the councilman, could have been the lady from the Highland Association. They chose not to come. So them choosing not to come shouldn't dictate what these people who came actually decided. And we had multiple meetings. It went on over 5 months. And we have 7. One time, only 2 people showed up. The meeting was held at 12. They said, hold the meeting after 5. We held it at 5:30. We held it from 5:30 to 6:30. And as long as they wanted to come out, I even walked them around my Airbnb, which is fine. I wanted to show them what we're actually doing. And again, those people said that they were in favor for it, the ones who actually showed up. The mayor knew about the second meeting. He chose not to show up. Councilman Brooks knew about the second meeting. He chose not to show up. So if you choose not to show up, then I can't give you what you don't want to be a part of anyway. So again, I don't want to postpone it. Please, if you can, just decide if you want it, cool. If not, that's cool too. I'll move on to something else.
Sir, I'd just like to say this, I'm not trying to tell you how to run your business, but the councilman has said, give him 2 weeks. Maybe in 2 weeks, they will change their mind. I believe that 80% of something is better than 100% of nothing. So if the councilman is willing to work with you, I know how you, I feel like I know how you feel, but I would give him that opportunity since he has said, give him 2 weeks.
Well, can you tell him to return my phone call?
Well, I'm just saying.
Gotcha.
All I'm saying is he hadn't said, just say no. He says, give him 2 weeks. A lot of things could happen in 2 weeks. So if I were you, I'm not you, I would at least give the councilman that time.
Fair?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
That's fair.
Yes, sir. Thank you very
And
much.
see if you can get them 7 people down here in 2 weeks as well. Thank you.
Sir? No, he made the motion. It's already on the floor. Yeah, it was second. To postpone.
Just real quick, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
50 decibels.
Yeah. I agree 100% with what Mr. Clark said. If I hear it one time, I hear it 1,000 times. It's hard to do business in the city of Shreveport because we do exactly what we're doing right now and postpone. However, I typically vote with the council member because he knows his district better than I do.
Yes, sir.
But I need to go on the record and say that if it were me, I would do an up or down vote, and you can move on, Mr. Taylor, you can, but at least you have some closure. So just for the record, I'm going to vote to postpone it, but I'm doing it closing my eyes and grit my teeth.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. If nothing else, push the button for postponement. Councilman, he already made the motion. Oh. Thank you.
Motion passes with 7.
Are there any other appeals today, Madam Clerk? Are there any reports from officers, boards, and committees? Madam Clerk, is there a clerk's report?
The following letter of appointment was received office on September 21st, 2023, and is subject for confirmation October 10th, 2023. Melissa Anderson to the Metropolitan Shreveport Zoning Board of Appeals.
Mr. Mayor, on Ms. Anderson, I'm sorry Mr. Clark's already left. I would like between now and then, I talked to Mr. Clark about it because he had asked me to submit some names and because it's replacing Mr. Crawford, who was in my district. And I asked him if he'd had an opportunity to speak to her, and he said he had not. So if you could, between now and then, get her to go and meet with Mr. Clark and kind of I'm not saying she doesn't understand what she's getting into, but I think the ZBA is a very important position, and I would like for her to at least sit down and talk to Mr. Clark.
I'll be glad to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, do you have any additional communications?
I do not.
Does any council member have any additional communications?
Yes, and the mayor does too. We have Taste of Southern Hills right after this meeting, so we're inviting everybody. The mayor will be there, so if you want a one-on-one and ask those tough questions, he will be there. I will be there as well, so y'all come in and get a taste of the best district, District E. Appreciate y'all.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you.
if
And when
I
y'all-
may, I'm going to the South Alliance Neighborhood Association.
And when y'all leave there, come to the old Morrisons. Executive session, there's none. If there's nothing else to come before this body, we adjourn. Y'all come to old Morrison, y'all come to old Morrison.